I do now want to turn to the Auditor General's report recommendations 6.26 and 6.29, specifically 6.29. Sustainable Development Technology Canada should reassess projects approved during the audit period to ensure that they meet the goal or met the goal and objectives of the Sustainable Development Technology Fund and all its eligibility criteria. This is a pretty serious bulk of your work, trying to ensure that there's a fair transition, not just for SDTC and taxpayers, but for the companies. And I understand that. But in the instance where there are ineligible projects like the ones noted by the Auditor General, in your reassessment of those projects, is there a potential outcome where the government or SDTC or NRC begin a process of recovery for those taxpayer dollars?
Mr. Chair, that is a possible outcome. We need to look at each one on a case-by-case basis. As we've noted, if we see evidence of fraud or wrongdoing on the part of recipients, we will undertake recovery and take appropriate action. And we will be looking at each case on a case-by-case basis in terms of what the appropriate action is as this process continues.
It seems important and part of your, I think, mandate as an ability to build public trust and to rebuild SDTC. It was mentioned by my Liberal colleagues that there may be an instance where the recovery amount is simply too small and it would cost too much for the government in the operation of trying to recover that fund. What is your perspective about that?
Mr. Chair, I think that all of those issues will need to be taken account, and that's why we've put in place a process to look at each project individually and to assess the circumstances of each project.
You know, I think
that, yeah.
When I think about this issue, about the issue of recovery, the importance of recovering funds that were inelibly given or granted to an organization or a company, those should be recovered. This is the same policy that the government has right now for COVID recipients. If you're an ineligible COVID recipient, they want to claw it back right now. And many of these people are just like $5, $10, maybe even $100 over the limit. They're barely ineligible, and they're very poor, they're working class people, and they're finding it very difficult to pay back this amount of money. Why is it that the companies, when I ask that question about how we treat individuals, how we treat people when they're just over the ineligibility line for COVID, the government said we're going to recover all of it. But when it comes to these huge companies that are getting all this funding, it seems as though there isn't a clear answer or any kind of confidence that you're giving me or Canadians that any amount will be recovered for these ineligible projects.
Mr. Chair, it's important that we follow a clear and transparent process. In the case where there's evidence of fraud or wrongdoing, the board will take action. If there are funds, for example, that are ineligible costs or areas where funding exceeds STT's contribution agreements, we will of course pursue those. So we need to look at each project on an individual basis, and the board will take appropriate action,
including recovery.
Thank you.
That could include recovery.
Thank you. You will have another opportunity, Mr. Desjardins. Turning now to Mr. Cooper, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Yes, MP Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Morgan, you have repeatedly said that where there is evidence of fraud or wrongdoing on the part of recipients, that will be considered for the purposes of eligibility. You emphasized time and again the word recipient. Are you considering conflicts of interest on the part of the former corrupt board members in assessing eligibility for projects? Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, the process that we've developed to look at projects in terms of funding restart, which is primarily what we're talking about, will address
Morgan,
both
my
issues
time is
of
limited, and I asked you a very
and
specific question, but you haven't answered. And it's an hour and a half into the hearing, and you've been asked this question or something in these terms, but you haven't actually given a direct answer.
Mr. Cooper, just a reminder, while I appreciate Ms. Morgan is here to answer questions, Ms. Morgan, I will remind you that the time is the members, and I know there's always back and forth when they insist on ending your answer for whatever reason. If you could just yield to them, please. And I appreciate you've been doing that generally. Time is limited, and we are coming to the end. So, Mr. Cooper, you have for 4 minutes. You can restate the question, but I think it was heard. Do you want to?
Well,
time is yours. Four
yes
minutes.
or no, are conflicts of interest on the part of the former corrupt board being considered, being assessed for the purpose of eligibility of those very projects that were approved and went out the door involving conflicts of interest of those board members? Yes or no?
As we look at the process to restart funding, we will address issues of eligibility and conflict of interest for previously approved projects.
It's a yes or no
And-
question.
Yes or no?
We will look at both eligibility and conflict of interest for previously approved process as we look at
You were very
restart of
specific in
program
using
funding.
the word recipient before. Now I'm asking you whether you are also considering conflicts involving board members. You have refused to answer yes or no on that very specific question. So I'll put it to you again, yes or no.
Mr. Chair, as we look at different issues, different
Holy
considerations
smokes,
come
lady.
into play, and vis-a-vis
Yes
recoveries.
or no?
Point of order,
order,
please.
Chair.
Point of order.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, Ms. Yip.
Should let the witness answer and not badger her. Give her the time to, be able to answer in fullness, please.
Thank you, Ms. Yip. Well, I have another point of order, Ms. Khalid, or Ms. Yip. Yes, all right. So, Mr. Cooper, you have the floor for 3 minutes. Look, I'll just say this to all members on both sides. I appreciate that direct answers are expected. Mr. Cooper is trying to narrow the response. He's entitled to do that. And Mr. Cooper, I turn the floor back to you, please, for 3 minutes.
I'm awaiting an answer to a yes or no question. She's wasting my time.
sorry.
Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, these are complex and nuanced issues, and they need to be looked at on a case-by-case basis under the process that we've established.
So you can't give a yes or no answer as to whether that is specifically being considered. So I'll take it as a no. So which is astounding. And so what it means is that projects that got ahead of the queue because of corrupt board members will continue to reap the benefits of the corruption at
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
SDTC that led to the
Point of
freezing
order,
of
and
funds
yes.
and a damning
This
audit.
better be
Yes,
a point of
Mr.
order.
Drouin.
I recognize that it's the honourable member's time, but he's putting words into the witness's mouth that has not been said
That's
publicly.
not a point of order.
That's what I take from her testimony.
So
Read the green book,
I
man.
didn't catch the putting words. I think Mr. Cooper is summarizing how he sees it. Mr. Cooper, you have the floor for
Yeah.
2:20.
So in essence, it's not a priority to clean up corruption. It's not a priority to clean up the conflicts. It's in fact, what is a priority is the status quo, to get money out the door as quickly as possible. It's really, really outrageous. Now, you said that you are in charge of, or part of your responsibility on the interim board is to oversee transparency with respect to transfer to the NRC. The SDTC every quarter published all funding decisions, project by project. Will that transparency continue when SDTC projects are transferred to the NRC? Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, I can't speak to that issue. We're in the process of discussion with the NRC.
Ms. Morgan, you said that your role is to oversee the transfer to the NRC. That is your primary focus as a board member, one of the 3 board members. You said transparency is a priority. I cited an example where there actually was a level of transparency at SDTC, and I'm asking you, will that continue? And if you can't answer that, are you at least taking steps to see that it will continue?
Mr. Chair, we've got a process in place where we're working through all of these issues
I
with
ask
the
you
NRC.
a simple question, and you dodge, once again, talking in generalities about process. Answer the question. I asked you very specifically about quarterly reports from SDTC.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Is that Khalid?
Yes, Ms. Khalid.
I don't think we're in the business of embarrassing or harassing witnesses that come before this committee.
That's not a point of order.
Look,
didn't even know
Ms.
she's in this
Khalid,
committee.
I appreciate this is frustrating, and these are good questions. And we're a
Respectfully, Chair,
parliamentary
these are not
committee
questions,
where
they're statements.
we're
They are not
which
questions,
which
Chair.
the witness can refute. Mr. Cooper's being very specific with respect to his questions, and he is entitled to pose them. I would hope we would get an answer. But when he doesn't get an answer, he is entitled to drill down further. Mr. Cooper, you have the floor.
Point of order, actually.
Yes, Mr.
When you say answer the question, you're not addressing that through the chair. I think that's what my
I
colleague, Ms.
see.
Khalid,
All right.
is trying
Mr.
to say.
Cooper, then if you could send your questions through the appreciate it.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chair, can the witness answer the question?
Chair, the NRC is an independent organization, and I am sure that they will be very transparent. But I can't answer the specific question about whether they will follow exactly the same transparency procedures as SDTC.
And it's astounding, but you can't assure that there would be at least an equivalent level of transparency, but there in fact might be less transparency, which would completely undermine one of the purported objectives of moving SDTC over to the NRC, that there would be less transparency, not more transparency. I think that what is going on, Mr. Chair, is that the minister is working to ensure that there will not be public scrutiny, that there won't be parliamentary scrutiny in the future of the kind of corruption that has been identified in SDTC.
Thank
it's
you.
about burying the corruption going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.